Well, welcome to Hot Topics, the first Hot Topics of 2022. So welcome, Andy.
Welcome, Phil. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year to you. Quite an exciting 2022. Let's hope it's a little bit more kind of productive and we can get back to normality, whatever the new normal is beyond 2021.
No, certainly. It's I think it's good. I think it's a good year. I think it's going to be a good year. I think it's going to be an exciting year for lots of people. Certainly all of the interactions we've been having already with businesses, everyone's got their plans, and all of the guys that we're working with have got their plans and their goals written, ready to get ready and get into them.
That's the important thing, isn't it? Because I know you and I just before Christmas were scribbling all over a whiteboard in terms of the how things were going for us and where the business needs to go and what our aspirations are for 2022. And we've got a bunch of webinars coming up, which we know attract a lot of interest, which is really, really good. And we're thinking about some new products and some new service lines. And we hope that everybody out there listening is thinking about where they're taking their business. Because, we're still in a rocky period, but actually, there's a lot of, in terms of clients, there's a lot of people now getting back out there and turning the miles. They'll all have New Year's resolutions, just like me, to say, well, I'm going to pick my catch to 5K back up again, which should mean I'll be talking to a physio somewhere close to me quite soon when I start to limp.
Yeah, well, but I think also, I think it's good to give you something to drive towards, isn't it? There's lots of, like
absolutely.
I think as a business, one of the things for many of us, it's exciting when you get the opportunity to look, reflect back and go, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what we're going to do different, and how are we going to, if you're very passionate about helping people, and we know therapists are, then it's a good opportunity to think, what are we going to do to improve the delivery of our service? Because we know the demand's going to be there this year. And so it's just, how do we look after people the best we can? And that's all, it's all we're trying to do ourselves, isn't it? It's just, how do we get people to run their businesses better?
And if you're out there scratching your head or are wondering how on earth I do that, then we've got lots of resources on the Academy, or just book a virtual coffee with us and we can talk to you about how we might be able to help you.
Certainly can.
But on this podcast, Andy, we're going to dive briefly into, or maybe not so briefly, into your favourite subject, but probably one of our favourite subjects around KPIs. But we're going to look at average journey length. And we're also going to talk about learning and development, training, and organisation design, I suppose, roles and responsibilities, and how as organisations grow, we need to keep an eye on the skills and knowledge of the team that we're developing. And I think we're going to kick off with KPIs, aren't we?
Yeah, I think it comes from conversations that we've had with lots of, so if you're new to listening to us, then one of the things you'll understand is that, we've both, probably me more than Phil, passionate around numbers and how we run businesses based on numbers rather than emotion, because there's the giddy thing that we hear lots of people, oh yeah, we're really busy, so therefore we must be doing well. Yeah. And unfortunately, what we find is that when we delve deep into people's numbers, we find that they could be losing, they're really busy, but actually they're still losing money or not making money. So the analogy, the busy fool, always comes around in it. But we were in a conversation, and one of the conversations that we were having was around average journey length, and rightly so, the question was asked to us, so therefore we thought it was something good to share. Was, well, what do we tell our staff, our team? Because fundamentally, an average journey length as a business, and the reason why we'd want this as a business, before the everyone jumps on the bandwagon of over-treating, as a business, we want to understand how often, on average, a customer is with us within a company, within a journey, or how long they're with you, the average they spend, because this allows us then to work out what's the profitability of a customer. And the profitability of a customer then tells us, are we spending too much on our overheads? Are we spending too much on our marketing? So we can work out the profitability of a customer, and that allows us to forecast forward of our profitability over a 12-month cycle. So that's why, as a business owner, that's a really important statistic.
Yeah.
It's also important to look at how long a customer is staying with you. And this can be a retention figure. Yeah. Now, for me, retention sits into customer service. So, if a customer's only been with you once or twice, and that's every is, then you would argue what kind of service you're delivering if over time. Is that the kind of service you want to deliver? Or are you looking to try and look at a long-term care of somebody, in which case you would want they're coming to more times? And
I think just to break in for a sec, I just think the nature of an average by definition means that it's a range of data.
Correct.
So it could be, 1, or it could be 20.
Yeah.
And the average, over a period, a number of clients, between businesses, between individual employees, will be different. And the question then is, so what are we learning from that? Which is where I'll let you pick back up again now, because it's kind of how we move that forward, isn't it?
100%. And for me, the data for a KPI data is for business making decisions.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Because it's the stuff to do. And like you quite rightly said, case by case, if you've got somebody that's a knee specialist in your clinic, they're more likely to be getting post-op knee replacements, ACLs, which are longer cases. Okay, but you might get someone to come that's just tweak the knee, and it is just, look, it's a 2-weeker, whatever, or they've got something which, or if you get somebody that comes in with an ankle sprain or something, it might not take as long because they can self-manage an awful lot or whatever. There's lots of different, so you're quite right that what I think we've got to be careful of as owners and leaders is that we're not, like you've said, we're not judging performance based upon that.
Yeah, because what I've heard done, in fact, I've heard it in many industries. Let's say so Andy's got an average of 6, and that could be an average journey length for a client in a therapy practice. It could be number of sales per day, number of inquiries, number of leads, or whatever it is. And let's imagine that Phil's got 3. So the easy mistake to make is that Phil's not as good as Andy, because he's got an average of 3 and Andy's got an average of 6. So if we use it as a blunt instrument to beat Phil with, then actually we're kind of missing the point, which comes back to your point about it's an average for the business. It's an indicator that we might use to help us understand what's going on within our organization. And that's where we would then start to delve into the quality of the data and the different pathways that you've talked about, and the different knowledge and experience and understanding of the particular employees that you're working with.
Definitely. And I think, and the reason why it's a bit of a contentious area is because for a long time, there's been a stigma attached to, well, if you see people for long periods of time, you're over treating. Mm. Whereas if you think about what, I'll talk from my own experience, I'm not going to judge anybody else, so I'll put myself above the parapet. My passion in my clinical world was when I rehabilitated somebody. I wanted them to be rehabilitated strong enough and confidently enough that they went through a whole journey, through their whole strength and conditioning, that they were able to return to the sport they wanted, to the activity they wanted, with total confidence. Okay. So I would generally spend more time with a client than somebody else may do locally. But I also had gone on and done that skill set. I'd gone and done my strength and conditioning. I'd gone at sports rehab. I got physio. So I got the skill set to be able to multi things. So for me, I could manage the whole journey. So they were with me a longer time than most. Okay. But the reason was that I felt that the service I was delivering was giving people confidence to return to their sport and get back to what they wanted to do, which I felt is my role and responsibility as a clinician. I didn't, not that I don't trust everybody else to go and do the end stage bit well. I don't, but so I went and learned to do it well myself, right? So that's, and that's how we built a team and a reputation around that. But I was always judged because people at Bupa would go, you're taking more than 5 sessions to get someone better. You must be crap or not very good. So I was being, so the stick that you're talking about is there. We're being judged by, private medical companies were telling us, and I know Physio First or when they were doing their audit, were saying people, well, an average person should get someone better under 4.6 sessions. So there were physios out there thinking, God, I must be really bad. I'm taking 6 sessions to get someone better. And I think, you know, and what we're highlighting this because we don't want you to be making the same mistakes in your business. We don't want you to be hitting people with sticks to say, whoa, hold on a minute, you're only getting 4 sessions and they're getting 6, like you've said. And, you know, if we get 6, we get more money. It's not about that. It's about, and this comes down to setting things up well in your organization. You know, and if you've ever heard any of my presentations at Therapy Live, you've heard any of our content on the Academy, I talk around a 3-step process in a consultation. So in a consultation, we have education and plan. Now, in the consultation, for me, the only goal is to work out the outcome of what a patient wants. Why are they there? What is it they want to do? What does it want to achieve? And what is this injury or complaint that they're coming with, stopping them from doing? So we set the end goal. And in our NLP world, we call it the desired state. What does the world want to be look like once you finished your journey? And that's what we help them work towards.
That's going to be different from an Ironman to a couch to 5K, isn't it?
Massively, Phil. And that's the thing. But what we also, so that is an individual, you know, if anything, you want to hold your team members to account. If they're not asking that question at the start, then that's what you hold them account to. And if they're not reaching that goal at the end, that's what you hold them account to. And you seek to understand why and what skills, expertise, and knowledge they need to do to help them achieve that better. Not actually, because, you know, it might be that the person comes in, and we've had, you know, we share stories all the time, but you know, we've had people come into clinic over the last 20 years of me being in clinical practice. People even come with MRI scans and gone, oh my God, I've had an MRI scan in my back and look what I've got. And I've turned around and gone, that's normal.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? That's totally normal. What you're suffering from is probably a bit of unfitness, a bit of return to sport too quickly. If you just take time getting fitter a bit quicker, you know what you're doing. Just don't try and run the 5K in week 1 of the counts to 5K, you know, or don't try and do an Ironman going off, signed up for one, let's see how far I can get, because you are going to get injured. So if you're smart with your training and you would advise and educate people well, you might not even have to see them again because they've already got the skills in them. They just needed the reassurance.
Well, I was going to say it kind of leads me on in terms of my own reflection about, you know, consult, educate, and plan. Because I think if I was thinking about an Ironman, then the education bit is probably going to be less than it might be for a couch to 5K, because the chances are, if you're a high performance athlete, you've been on a couch many times. Yeah. You actually understand what you may even understand biologically, mechanically what you've done and what the issue is. What you need is some help and support on how to fix it and put a plan in place. If you are trained at that level, you're more likely to implement the plan because your desire is stronger to get back to do what you want to do. Yeah. Whereas if you're, you know, Joe Public, who's got a bit of a limp, then, you know, that you may have, or your patient, your client, customer may have had a lot less time, if any time, in a therapy practice, and not even understand what a clinician's job or role is. And then when you come to the education bit, your education bit is going to be completely different. Yeah. Because it's the context in which you're operating, isn't it?
Yeah. 100%.
And we only really become skilled, as we often talk about. There's the technical, clinical knowledge, mechanical knowledge and understanding of the human system, but then there's the interpersonal behavioral skills and the way you actually are able to articulate that, to communicate that to your client, that actually is going to get them engaged to want to get better, to put the plan into practice, and to see recovery and them to achieve their goals. So I think it's always an interesting and dynamic topic. And you know, from my organizational life, I would say, although I'm not a clinician, I'm using a similar skill set to help individuals, teams, and organisations actually to understand what's going on in the same way as a physio would do in the treatment room, which is again why we call our podcast the treatment room.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think the big learning thing for us before we move on to learning development is that, we wanted to share this on the basis that we didn't want you to get confused when we're talking around having these KPI structures in the business, that then this is what you hold your team to account to. So I think it's really important to differentiate what you're using as markers for your own business performance, and as a leader, what do you need to delve into more, or what do you need to look at, where's need changes and what needs time and attention, rather than using that to judge the performance of your staff. I think, judge performance on staff on.
And I'd use that as a bridge. I'd use that as the bridge to move us into the conversation about learning and development, because for me, the data, the measures, that average journey length could be an interesting indicator to have a conversation with Phil. If we go back to the example of Andy's an average of 6 and Phil's an average of 3, maybe the average for the business is 8. So what is it that's sitting behind the data that we can see about Andy and the data that we can see about Phil? And it's only when we start to dig behind that to understand what's actually going on in practice, and that could be down to individual case reviews as a performance or a development tool, or as a learning opportunity for a team, that we start to understand what it is we might actually need to focus on, which takes us into this piece around learning and development, which again it can be a bit dry. Some people think learning and development, training, that's big business do that, or it's expensive, or why should I? So for me, there's kind of a basic assumption that if we're any good at recruitment and selection, and most of us in truth aren't very good at recruitment and selection, even people who are experts at it, the chances to finding the right person with the right skills who's a perfect fit for your organization is a bit like winning the lottery. Sometimes we get lucky. But we are assuming that we're testing for basic competence to be able to perform the mechanics of the job that they're recruited to. But then we have to help them to understand how we want them to do that job in the context of our organization. And then as we develop and grow our organization, we want to develop and grow the people, ideally grow the people that we've got within the organization. And this is the bit we want to focus on, I think, today, isn't it, Andy, in terms of that conversation?
Yeah, I think so. And I think before we start this, we recognize that no one's doing anything wrong or with intention. We're just trying to highlight how you could do things better. And I think a lot of small businesses, I'll go through my examples. We grow, we get more people in, and we want to promote and develop people. So we put them in roles that are more senior because they've been there longer, or they're really good at what they do. And I'll talk personally. You assume, because they've worked with you long enough, that when they step into a more senior role, they're going to do that role really well. And they're going to do it how you think it should be done. And then you get surprised when you go, well, they don't do it as well as I thought they should do. Though.
Yeah.
Maybe they're crap. Well, they haven't been for the last 4 years or 5 years or 6 years they've been with you. It's just that they're in a different role, a different position. And on reflection, when you look at it, you go, well, I've never taught them how to be a manager and a leader. And I've never been taught how to coach management leadership. So again, it's me, I've gone off and done all my management leadership quals because it was one of the things I wanted to do. But you and I both know the difference between being one good thing and being a coach of one thing is a whole different thing as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a different skill set. So then the difference between you being a good leader or being taught how to be one and then being able to coach somebody else in. And I think sometimes this is where in my opinion anyway, and I'm sure you'll jump in and with, is that I think it's the downfall of some of us that we don't think about it until afterwards. So there's the consequence of going, if we're going to promote somebody, should we be proactive thinking, okay, cool, what's the role they're moving into? What training development do they need to do? Is this something I can do, or is it something we need to outsource or get support? Rather than getting 6 months into a role of where you're unhappy because they're not doing it the way you want it to do. They're unhappy because you keep telling them off because they're not doing it the way to do, and then sending them on it. So I think for me, that's the relevant bit, or the piece that I wanted to kind of highlight, was is just shining on. If you're thinking to grow or development in your organization, how are you going to do that? We're comfortable if we bring a graduate in that we have to train them up because they've had no experience, right? So you kind of go, oh, I'm going to have to put time and effort into these to grow clinically. But we move people into senior roles within leadership, even a senior physio role, especially in private practice. In the NHS, they do have these kind of processes, but in private practice, we just don't, and we just assume that they're going to do a good job and they're going to do things the way we want it to do.
Yeah. And I think what we're understanding is in small organizations, it was kind of always true that as you grow, you kind of think, well, I'm a good clinician, but I haven't got a clue how to run accounts, or I haven't got a clue how to do marketing, or to do reception work, or whatever it is. So I'll hire a receptionist, just to use a label that most people will make some assumptions on in terms of what they think receptionists are and what they think receptionists do.
Yeah.
But what actually is the role that you want performed within your organization that you're calling a receptionist? And then how do you know when you're going out to the marketplace to find that person that actually they have got the right skill set, knowledge and understanding to be able to work in your small organization? And then if you make a good choice, then they are likely to take on additional responsibilities. And we know that we often kind of scrabble around and work things out. Social media is probably a good example, isn't it? When you're a 1 or 2 person organization where you kind of self-taught how you're using Facebook and Instagram in particular, or Google Ads maybe, or Google reviews and things like that. So you kind of teach yourself by watching a YouTube clip or by talking to a friend or a colleague, and you kind of stumble through it. And then you get some level of confidence about what you're doing, but it doesn't actually make you competent in social media. And then we always have this conversation about, well, yeah, but if you're taking an hour out of your working day to fiddle around with social media and you're a physio, well, how many appointments have you lost as a consequence of fiddling around with social media? And what's the opportunity cost then in your organization of you spending 2 appointments fiddling around putting a social media ad up? So then you think, well, I'll go and get some social media support. But actually getting clarity about what you're after is really important. Then getting some better understanding about where that skill set may lie. I think the other complication we've got is, if I'm working with you, Andy, and you're thinking, Phil's a good lad, I'd like him to take on some additional role. And then you come to me and say, Phil, I've got this opportunity. I want you to take, do a bit of marketing for me. What am I going to say? I'm going to go, yeah, okay, Andy, yeah. I'll have a go at that. I'm not going to go, Andy, I haven't got a clue about social media. So it's a big ask. So you're going to make some assumptions that I've taken it on board, and I'm happy to take it on board. And you might be thinking, great, that's fantastic. I've got rid of that now. Phil's going to do it. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't really know what I'm doing. I was a really good physio. Now I'm compromised because I can't spend as much time as a physio because I'm also doing some social media, which I don't really know much about. But Andy wants me to do it. And then we get a little bit further down the line and Andy's looking at Phil going, well, what's happening with the social media? I can't see anybody coming through the front door. And then I start feeling pressured. And I'm thinking, well, I only ever wanted to be a physio.
Yeah.
Or a bookkeeper, whatever it could be. Take a bit of finance on for me, or sort these Bupa claims out, or anything. Yes, all right, I'll do it. But I don't have the skill set. And in some of the conversations we've been having, it's kind of going, okay, Phil, I'd quite like you. Are you interested in social media? Yeah, Andy, I'm really interested, but you know what? I haven't got a clue how to do it. And you go, okay, well, should we put you on a course, or sit with George, who's really good at it, or I'm actually, as the business owner, I'm really good at interested in social media. So if I kind of show you what I do and how I do it, will you go off and have a go with me? And I'll just keep an eye on you. We can have a conversation. So it doesn't necessarily mean spending loads of money.
Yeah.
But it does mean paying attention as the business owner, or the manager in the business, if you've got responsibility for reception and all back office services or something like that. What skills do we need? As the business owner, have we got the knowledge and the coaching capability to be able to transfer those skills in a confident and competent way to the person that we're trying to support? Or are we better looking outside to other providers who can give our team the skills and knowledge that they need to do a good job? Because the worst thing we can do is overburden somebody, give them new duties and responsibilities, who actually means they think, I have to leave. I've got to leave the organisation because my credibility, I can't let Andy down. And so I'll have to go and look for another job somewhere else, which means I can go back to being a physio, or going back to being whatever the job is within your organisation. And you lose, as a business, you then lose a lot because you've lost a good member of staff. You've also dropped a big hole in your organisation design. So with a little bit of thought and asking the right questions and looking for the right kind of support, you can get a good program of support in place that enables your colleagues to be at their best more of the time.
No, certainly. And I think the big summary for me would be that if you are planning this year to promote somebody, think proactively. Think about what skills and expertise will be needed to do those additional roles that you're potentially going to be asking somebody, and put some plans in place so that you are thinking. So if you are going to promote somebody, well, what kind of leadership skills are you going to need? Do you have them? And is there something that you can get some funding for, or something to put them through some extra additional training, so that, so hopefully if they do take it on, then you give them the option that it's there if they want it. So I think it's a lot about being proactive and about being organized, isn't it? And finding.
You just made me think, actually, and we often have a occasional conversation, don't we, about Shockwave, and it'd be the same as if you're developing a new product line, or bringing in a new piece of kit. Then sometimes it's a bit more obvious that you think, okay, I've got a new piece of kit. People ought to know how to use it. Is it sitting by Nelly? Is it, well, I'll become the expert and then I'll share that? Or actually, do you want an expert to come in and train everybody to a particular standard, get them qualified or certified or signed off in the same way that you might do with getting your electrical equipment pack tested? You wouldn't just kind of do that yourself. You get some expertise in, because it's going to mean you can maximize the revenue and return on the piece of kit. It's going to be used safely. Everybody's feeling confident and competent to use that kit, when and how to use it. So you're going to maximize the return on the investment. Alternatively, you could just go and blow a few quid on a new gadget and have it sat in a cupboard, and only one person can use it once a week. But then you don't necessarily think, I should train other people to use it, because actually it could be to great effect. Any and all of that may be true, and there's certainly things to think about as you develop your organizations through 22.
No, certainly is. And I think, that's what we're trying to do, isn't it? Let's just try and shine, touch, beam and ideas. So if you ask a favor, if you do like the podcast and what we talk about, if you can rate us and give us a nice rating of how you feel it's helping you, that'd be great. Please feel free to share the podcast with your colleagues and anyone else that's going through. If there's anything or topics that we haven't covered yet that you want us to cover, then please feel free. Remember to follow us on our Eventbrite, because we've got some new webinar series coming up, which is really exciting and good. Follow our www.elevateyourclinic.com for announcements. If you haven't signed up to our newsletter, make sure you sign a newsletter, because like Phil said at the start, we've got some new products coming this year that we hope will really help you transform your therapy business. And keep following us. We really appreciate all of the feedback that we get on very regular basis from the support and the content that we're doing. So we wish you all the best.
We do indeed. So until next time, Andy.
Until next time, look after yourselves.